So I'll go now to the second part of my talk, more on kind of what is a view from the research lab. What are we doing in the university? And so we'll go straight there. And so of course, I'm a university professor, right? And so what do I do? What I do has to align, of course, with what the university wants to do. And what the university wants to do is, here I've just taken the mission statement from the website. It's really a long mission statement, so I've cut out the part that's important. And so here, what does the university want to do? It's an institute that's dedicated to education, quality education, influential research, and visionary enterprise. There's three pieces to what the university does. And the first one is very obvious. It's quality education. We want to train the best and brightest of our generation, and we want to make sure they're best and brightest still when they come out, right? We don't want to make them worse. And in fact, we want to add more to that, right? We want to make these students kind of understand the world around us and how they can take that knowledge and use it to influence the future. And so quality education, of course. But that's a mission for any educational institute, all the way from secondary to JC to university. That's what all educational institutes have in common. What makes a university a little bit different, a research university a little bit different, is that they're dedicated to, additionally to that, two other things, right? They're dedicated to influential research and visionary enterprise. What does that mean? Well, research is the production of knowledge, right? So they want the university not just to be a place where we take knowledge that was already produced and shove it into the student's brain, but we actually want to be the place where research actually happens, right? Where knowledge creation happens. And so that's kind of a very important thing that really sets a research university apart from any other educational institute. Finally, enterprise. Enterprise is like the act of creating companies and making money, right? And so we want to take that knowledge, and that knowledge should be practical. And to be practical, it really has to get out there into the world, and that happens through companies and through the act of commerce. And so in enterprise, we're interested in taking this research, this knowledge that we produced, and actually bringing it out to the world and make some money along the way, right? And so that's kind of the idea. And so as a university professor, I actually have three jobs: research, teaching, and service, right? And so when I go to my yearly evaluation, they ask me, well, how good on each three things did you do? And so what might be surprising is that I don't just teach, right? So some people have the misconception that the professor's job is just to teach. In fact, I have to spend a lot of time doing research and service as well. Now, service is just serving on committees, helping the university run. So that's this kind of administrative job. But research is really kind of a primary goal as a professor. So the idea is that the students will be the ones that not only learn from people who can teach well, but also from the person who's producing that knowledge. Because firsthand knowledge, firsthand experience creating that knowledge. And so what does research look like, actually? So teaching is like what I'm doing now. I kind of give lectures, I give quizzes and exams. And so research, what does that look like? Well, that happens inside the research group. This is my research group. It's a big one. We have 20 plus students inside this group. Who are the people in this group? Well, obviously they're undergraduates, the people inside the university. They're the students who take classes, but these are kind of good students who aren't just happy taking classes. They want to take part in the creation of knowledge. And so they spend a bit of their time, their free time, kind of coming to the lab and working inside my lab to try to address some problems. The next group are PhD students. These are students who are learning to do research. So they still take a few classes, but not very many. In fact, very little classes. They spend most of their time just learning, kind of almost like an apprentice, how to do research and how that happens. And then finally, we have full-time researchers. These are students these are people whose job is research, so they have some experience, they've learned how to do it. And I employ them, and so I'm also an employer, to actually come and work full-time in the lab. And so this is the collection of people that actually do the work. And so research is truly an international enterprise. The students in my group are, and in a typical group in NUS, really come from all around the world. Of course, Singapore, and from the region we have Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, China, India. A little bit farther away we have Turkey, the UK, and also USA. And so all these people come from all over the place. Research is kind of, it happens at the global scale, right? You don't want to be the person who did something first in Singapore is not that interesting. We want to be first in the world, right? And so so really we spent a lot of exchange with the kind of outside world to make this happen. And so so these people here, and that's me on the far end over here, together spend every day inside a lab that looks like this. This is the lab. We've cleaned it up for this photo, and so it is it's always messy. So this is kind of a lab inside NUS. In fact, when you drive by NUS, this is in the big building that has the word medicine over it. So we're working in the School of Medicine right now. I'm an engineer, but the university is very multidisciplinary. They have people from all different areas coming together to address kind of problems. And so inside this space, this space is mostly computers. You can see she's running a simulation here. This is what I call the thinking, calculating, reading, and writing space. Okay. So we actually spend the bulk of our time in this space. We sit in front of a computer and think about the problems. We think of solutions. We wonder if they'll work. And how do we first know if it works? Well, we calculate. Well, we could go out and do it, but that's slow. Many times in engineering, we know the equations that can kind of predict if this will work or not. So here, the student is running a simulation that can predict whether or not this will work. And so we can run experiments without actually doing them by calculating. Then we do reading. We kind of keep up to date with what the world is doing in this area, and we write. And so the writing is really important because any research we do, well, that only exists in my brain or in this bench. How does the world know what we're doing? And so a lot of us time spent is actually writing this up and sending it out to the world in the form of academic papers that becomes part of the knowledge on which we build. So this is the thinking, writing, reading space. This is our building, testing, recording data space, right? So this is a lot messier. So this is right next to our lab. And so you can see a bunch of students working on different things. There's a bunch of coils of wires. There are kind of interesting rubber solutions all around. They're building devices and testing them and showing that they work. And really what makes a scientist different from a guy just inside the garage doing this. What's the main difference? The main difference is that we write down the data, right? So we record the data that we do, and we do that very systematically and present that, right? But otherwise, it's really much what any hobbyist or person in the garage might with just the interest in doing this, might do. And so that is what my lab looks like. And so together we have basically inside the lab like a basic mission. Our mission in the lab as defined by me, the professor, is to use electronics to better study, diagnose, and treat disease. Right? So basically in the mission in the lab, as we do things, we always keep in mind how are the things we do address the problems of like using electronics to study, diagnose, or treat disease, right? So that's kind of our broad mission. And we're interested by like a picture like this, right? Like we all know that this is medicine. We see these little capsules and we think medicine right away. But really what stops an electronic device from also being a type of medicine? There are people out there, and maybe many in this room today, that have a pacemaker installed in them, right? For a person like that, this is already medicine to them, right? This is actually making them better. And so how do we bring that forward to the rest of the world? How do we continue the amazing abilities of these electronic devices to make better medicine? And so let me walk you through a very specific example of just all of this working together. And that's a form of a research project. And so today, so the remainder of this talk, I want to summarize our kind of a very specific project that we've done on smart textiles. And so as researchers, we are all aware of what the cutting edge of smart textiles is. We know what current devices can do and what they can't do. And as researchers, we're interested in pushing that boundary. How do we bring that beyond. And so to start, we need a very specific problem to work on. And so this problem that we've posed, the one that we've kind of posed for this project, is the one of this, right? Like imagine this young person out in the street today with all these devices around them, right? Like a headphone, a health monitor, a smartwatch, a smartphone. He has all these devices around him. How do you interconnect all these devices together? They have to be able to talk with each other, coordinate with each other in order for this to work. Now, currently, maybe about 5 years, or 10 years ago, we would use wires. Like a headphone always is wired, right? But ever since then, you can obviously, wires are not an option as you have more and more devices. You can't wire yourself up. It would be really physically obstructive. And so today we use wireless technology to kind of interconnect all these devices. Things like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and we connect them all together. But all these wireless technologies kind of have a fundamental problem that I'll describe in a moment. And so to actually go after this problem, we have students, hardworking students who are working on this, but we also need funding, right? So our funding comes mostly for this project from the National Research Foundation. It is a government foundation set up to support research like this. They're a government foundation, so ultimately the person we have to thank is everyone in this room. Thank you for paying your taxes because that's what supports this research. And so the problem is how to connect these devices. How does that work? Well, today, the only way to do this is to use something like Bluetooth, for example. How does Bluetooth work? There's different levels I could explain it, but maybe the simplest way is to show you this picture. Imagine a Bluetooth device in front of me trying to communicate with maybe my smartphone behind me. This has to happen. Right? Like a Bluetooth device is sending out a wave. It's a radio frequency electromagnetic wave working at 2.4 gigahertz. You don't need to know that. It's just a wave that goes out. And it kind of looks like this. If you think about how any wave moves, there's like ripples in a pond, your body gets in the way because the body is obviously blocking the wave. And you can see that actually very little of it reaches where it's supposed to go. This is smart. So all this energy out here is actually just wasted. What does that mean? It means someone out here could listen. I could actually eavesdrop on your signal. So for any wireless system, kind of security is really important. This is kind of insecure. And maybe more importantly, in terms of power, right? This Bluetooth device has a battery. The more energy I send, the faster the battery goes down. This is what most wireless devices spend their battery life doing, right? If you take your phone and turn it to airplane mode, the battery lasts much longer. The difference is because in airplane mode, it doesn't send wireless signals out. And so that saves a lot of energy, right? And so this is what happens with any wireless device today. And so in this project, we were interested in changing the way this happens. Can we make this wireless signal move in a different way? We want to solve this problem of inefficiency and insecurity. We want to save energy and also make this a very secure system. So how do we do that? Our idea was to transform this wireless signal into this wireless signal. So you have two, from here to here. This is a very different kind of wireless signal. It's a signal that glides on the surface of your body rather than goes out into the space around you. And so if you could make a signal look like this, then this would be very efficient. All the energy would go where you want. It's very secure because if you're standing out here, I can't pick up that signal. And so that's what we wanted to do. And of course, the really big question was, well, that sounds great, but how on earth do you actually do this? How do you change how a wireless signal moves? The way we did it was using clothing. Right? And so you're wearing clothing on you all the time. And so we're going to give this person a very special kind of clothing, and that kind of clothing will make this happen. And so that clothing starts with this basic idea. We want to take your normal clothing and put on top of it conductive clothing. I talked a little bit about conductive fabric. Those are already well established. People can make these today. But these conductive fabrics have a really special pattern. You can see it has a sawtooth or comb pattern. This comb pattern will make the wireless signals move on it this way. Like wireless signal will get stuck on the fabric like this, rather than move out in the space around like this. So by just choosing these patterns really carefully, we can actually, just by holding your phone over it, we can trap the signal from your phone onto your clothing. And so what we have to do now, so this is the bulk of our time in research, right? And so we had this problem, and so most of our time actually was spent in trying to figure out how to make this happen, and make this happen in a reasonable way. So we took all our knowledge in kind of physics and engineering to make this happen. And so this is in a simulation, right? So I can't actually see these waves because they're invisible wireless signals, but inside a computer, I can calculate what will happen. I can see the wave move like this. And so after we see this in a simulation, we build it and we test it. And so what we have to do now is take this pattern and cover your body in it. So that's what we did. We covered your body in this pattern. So this is my student. He says he wants to look like Iron Man, right? So, so he's looking like Iron Man here. So he's built onto his clothing all these different patterns, and these patterns can control the wireless signals moving around you. And so again, we want to see that in action, right? So how do we see that? These wireless signals are invisible, but we can kind of use a phone to kind of gauge what is happening. So here, I'm going to show a short video of what happens when you're wearing this clothing. Right now, the student is wearing the clothing and transmitting a Bluetooth signal. That Bluetooth signal contains his heart information, his ECG. So when you're not wearing anything, you can see that he can pick up this ECG signal far away. And that's not surprising because that's the way Bluetooth works, right? Of course, Bluetooth works about a meter away. And with normal Bluetooth, that signal can travel quite far. Now, wearing this special clothing, doing the same thing, but now wearing this clothing, sorry. Okay, there we go. Now, wearing this clothing, you can see he can pick up the signal now, but the moment he moves away, that signal's gone. And so I've successfully trapped that signal onto my clothing. So other than being very surprising, weird, what does that mean? It means that on my clothing, the signals are stronger by 1,000 times because the signals are on my clothes, not in the air around. That means I can save energy by 1,000 times on my clothing. That means much, much longer battery life for any device that I'm wearing on me in this way. What's also surprising is that I can actually use these wireless signals to begin to power things, right? If you think about a wireless signal transmitting from your phone, there's actually enough power coming out of that wireless signal to light up an LED. Normally, you can't do that because the energy just goes out and spreads out. But actually having that on your clothing, you can actually light up LEDs around your body. So that means we can put devices, we can use your phone and send energy to a device somewhere else and actually have it powered. And those have no batteries, right? They last forever. This actually goes through fabric. It's not because I'm touching the metal or anything, right? This is actually a wireless system. And as you move, you can see that LED stays on. So it's actually quite robust as you bend this. Kind of surprisingly, I can actually control my phone too using this clothing. So I'm touching this clothing and you can see my screen changes. The reason I'm able to do that is because my phone is sending a wireless signal, and when I touch this, I kind of interrupt the wireless signal. My finger gets in the way of that signal, and my phone can detect that, and I can kind of control my phone. So you might imagine in the future wearing this special pattern. You can tap your phone to go to the next song or something, or adjust the volume on your phone. So that was our research project, we had this idea. We built the system, we demonstrated it, we took data on it, and we presented it to the world. It appeared on the cover of a journal called Nature Electronics. And so this is like a magazine that only scientists read, only scientists in engineering. But it's a very nice magazine. And so we appeared on the cover, and so that knowledge is now out there in the world. And by putting that out, a lot of companies got interested. They saw that work and asked us, hey, can you take this device, put it onto our clothing and to our systems, and try to make that work better. And so currently we've made these fabrics, but we don't have a product yet, right? This is not something you can just buy now yet to do something very concrete. So what do we want to do? Well, we're interested now in kind of taking this pattern and putting it onto like hospital gowns or maybe athletes. Today in the hospital, you might be asked to do a test that looks like this. This is called a cardiopulmonary stress test. You can see that, it works okay in the hospital, but there's all these wires flying around. It's very obtrusive for this poor patient. Could we remove all of these wires? Could we replace that with like a single gown that could do all of these measurements without having to do this? If you could do that, then we can even bring the system out of the hospital into kind of the athletic situation and kind of measure signals that help these people perform better and kind of improve their health. And so through the supports of our funders, funding agencies, we've been able to receive a patent on this kind of technology, and we're hoping to bring this out to the world hopefully in the next 2 to 5 years. And so to conclude, I want to end with kind of this picture of Singapore. Today, medicine is kind of like this picture of Singapore, right? It is this static picture, right? Today, as we measure you, we take a blood test, we take an MRI scan, we look, even take your blood pressure at that moment. We're taking very accurate measurements, and it's amazing how accurate it is, kind of like this map. Today, we're able to get a very detailed map of what Singapore looks like, and we can take a snapshot of your body, a very detailed snapshot of your body in the same way. But this map doesn't tell me everything. It doesn't tell me, for example, how much time it might take for me to go from my home to this place, right? And so that kind of information requires a dynamic picture of your body or this map. What I really want is kind of like a traffic picture, right? I want to see how is traffic kind of happening in this map at this moment. I want to know where traffic is not working, where are the car accidents, where are the cars bunched up. In the same way, I want to kind of look at your body and be able to tell, like by having this map, I can tell much more quickly and much more accurately what part of the body has gone wrong. And so that is kind of our goal for wearables. We want to kind of go from these static pictures to these dynamic pictures. And hopefully we can do that using a simple wearable device that looks like this and not something very complicated that looks like this. All right, so thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Prof.